Long Beach area. Now, at one point in time, the vehicle was traveling into oncoming traffic. We don't believe there's been an accident yet, but at this point in time, with an aircraft overhead, they're doing what they can to try and stop this vehicle driving more erratically, as you saw going to the gas station there. So very unpredictable. You don't know exactly what's going on in a situation like this. We believe there's 3 people on board, the driver and at least 2 more. A lot of activity inside the vehicle. You see our real-time speed tracking there at 65 miles an hour on Cherry Avenue, so well above the speed limit, turning out to be a very dangerous pursuit. At one time, it was only 25 miles an hour. Now, at this point in time, it's really increased as far as speed is concerned. We don't know exactly why this vehicle was initially pulled over. We don't have that information yet, but certainly a situation like this is so dangerous this time of the afternoon on surface streets at a high rate of speed, now southbound on Cherry Avenue through the Long Beach area. Once again, you know, we hate to see these types of situations when suspect gets, somewhat in a situation they'll do anything to get away, because that's when we know how dangerous it will be and so unpredictable. We are southbound headed towards Carson Street, I believe, off of Cherry Avenue, making a right turn there at a pretty high rate of speed. Several vehicles behind, patrol cars. They also have a helicopter overhead, and at this point in time, we're just hoping that no one gets hurt. They don't hit anyone out on the roadway, and hopefully, a best case scenario, they'll give themselves up. But it has certainly taken a turn for the worst in the last couple of minutes, with his vehicle traveling at a very high rate of speed and doing almost anything to get away from police.
Right now on East Carson Street, it looks like. Do we have any idea, have we figured out yet what this person was wanted for initially and what sparked this pursuit to begin with? Have you heard any of that yet, Scott?
Yeah, we did not get that. Initially, it was a vehicle traveling at a slow rate of speed. It was a pursuit at only 25 miles an hour. Also, then there was a report that the vehicle was traveling into oncoming traffic to try and get away from police, and it was LA County Sheriff's deputies actually backed off from the pursuit for a time until LAPD got a helicopter overhead to help them out with the surveillance. They actually backed off because they were concerned about it. We're in the Long Beach area now, so Long Beach will be the agency on this because they just have more knowledge of the streets in this area. But at 60 miles an hour on probably a posted 35 to 40, you can see how dangerous it is eastbound on Carson Street. So as far as that initial information is concerned, exactly why this vehicle was pulled over, we don't have that yet, but we do have at least 3 people inside the car, a lot of activity inside the vehicle, and the vehicle traveling at a very high rate of speed through some of these surface streets.
Yeah, we've seen him mainly, or he or she mainly, stay on those surface streets. And like you said, we did see somebody in the front seat. It looked to be a woman, and someone in the back seat earlier when we were watching on the big monitor. So adding to the danger, just poor people that are driving in the car with that suspect.
Absolutely, and then the time of day, you know, I mean, we're getting towards the 5 o'clock hour here, but a lot of people are out on the streets. It's cooling off in Long Beach. They might be out riding their bikes. There might be kids out playing. And boy, we just hate to see this. I've seen too many of these pursuits in the past where an innocent person was hurt or killed, and this is the kind of pursuit that has that potential. Now, 47 miles an hour on our real-time speed tracking isn't that high, but we saw it closer to 60 in probably a 35 to 40 mile an hour zone. Police are still right behind. There was a point in time when they actually backed off because they didn't want to actually push this suspect into a situation where he was driving more erratically and at a higher rate of speed. But at this point in time, they're staying right behind the suspect, and it looks like they have every intention on staying on this. But it's dangerous. You can see that coming very close to several other cars here. We're on Atlantic Avenue northbound now, traveling up towards, if we continue, would be towards the 91 freeway.
Right, and it looks like he's using, I guess that's not a bike lane, but it's some sort of access lane. And you see all the cross traffic. As you pointed out, whenever you're on the surface streets, you've got cross traffic, you've got people pulling out of driveways, you've got people crossing the street potentially, especially at this time of day when traffic is starting to build up. It's people are heading home after their work day. That it really does amp up the danger, and you are right, Scott, about the potential for this ending badly, especially now, as you see, getting up above 70 miles an hour on Del Amo Boulevard here. Are you getting a sense that the driver is making circles, or does it appear they're headed in any particular direction at this point?
Well, we haven't seen that, although this is the second time we've been on Del Amo. So if we get back on to Cherry Avenue coming southbound, then we would have a pattern. And we see that a lot in lots of cases where a suspect will get into an area where they're comfortable or where they have knowledge of the streets. But boy, I tell you, pursuits like this almost never end well. You've got a suspect right now that is very unpredictable driving the vehicle, driving erratically. It looks like they have no intention of just pulling over. I can't tell what that suspect in the back seat was doing there, but you don't know if drugs and alcohol are involved. You just know that the suspect does not look like he has any intention of just giving up. You know, some of these pursuits, they go slow. You see a suspect that's not driving that erratically, but in this case, we're seeing a type of behavior that usually ends up in these things not ending well. Now, we're still on Del Amo. We passed Cherry, which we were on earlier, I believe, and our speeds, as you can tell, the real-time speed tracking is just incredible for us on these pursuits. We passed Lakewood Boulevard, so we're further east than we were before. We're just north of Long Beach Airport, but that real-time speed tracking in SkyMap 7 giving us the streets is just so incredible compared to 30 years of using a Thomas guide. It's such an effective tool, and we just see a lot of erratic driving here. So folks, if you are aware of where this is in the northern Long Beach area, north of Long Beach Airport, and your kids are out, you know, try and get them, get a hold of them, see what you can do, because I've seen that happen in the past, and it can be so tragic. Going through what appeared to be a red light and slowing down for a moment and then going through that intersection, and that gives you an idea just how dicey it is and how desperate the driver of that vehicle is.
Yeah, so we've got 3 people on board, it appears. One driver, what appeared to me at least to be a female passenger, and in the passenger seat, and then someone sitting in the back seat. And all 3 of these people, we don't know if some might be a hostage perhaps, or if these are all people that are involved in whatever the event was that sparked this pursuit. The person sitting in the back seemed to be pretty relaxed. It was a guy, and he had his arm up kind of along the back of the seat there. It looked like he was kind of relaxed sitting back there based on his body language. But it does continue now. The speeds are high, upwards of 60 miles an hour on Del Amo Boulevard. And being pursued now. Is it still Long Beach that is mainly the pursuing agency, or is it LA County Sheriff's? Has there been a handoff here at any point?
You know, we'll have to push into that vehicle real quick. The patrol car behind there, it is Long Beach. They are the authority and the agency that is on this initially. There is a LAPD helicopter overhead assisting them, and but we have not seen a pattern. You know, we talked about that pattern earlier, but now we are still in the Long Beach area. We're eastbound on Del Amo. If you continue eastbound, you'll end up at the 605 freeway, although there we see an erratic left turn, and it looks like, boy, there you go. That's the type of thing here. We have some traffic at this intersection at Graywood and Del Amo. The patrol car right behind, and you see that person in front really wanted to get out of the way, which is a smart move. And right now, hopefully, they'll get out of the car and give themselves up. But unfortunately, this type of behavior usually does not give you that type of result. And once they had a freeway to go through that intersection, they took off.
Yeah, that's stopping, slowing down, and taking off again. And certainly he's going miles an hour right now on these streets, and certainly not paying attention to traffic very much, and just going in and out, leaving.
To a red light.
Running a red light.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so is the freeway ahead of him still right now, Scott?
It is. You know, the freeway's probably a good mile away from us, but that's just a good, gives you an idea where we're at traveling eastbound on Del Amo. We're actually in the city of Lakewood, moving to the eastern end of Long Beach, if you will, 70 miles an hour there. Now, this is a pretty wide street. There's not a lot of little streets that turn off onto this, so we don't have the type of danger that you would have, say, if you're in a neighborhood where you have a lot of homes. But certainly if you're going to run a red light and you're going to try and get away from police into oncoming traffic, in a situation like this, boy, it just gives you an idea how tough it is. And now a right turn onto Bellflower Boulevard, so we're headed south towards Long Beach Airport. Could put us into a situation where we have to cross the extended center line at Long Beach and not be able to continue. But at this point in time, we'll have a couple of miles before that happens. If there is a pattern to this individual, we haven't seen it. It started, we believe, around Acacia and Rosecrans in the Compton area, and we've been down into Long Beach, and now we're in the Lakewood, Long Beach area. It's right on the border here, headed southbound on Bellflower Boulevard. All
right, and as we watch this, Bellflower is also one of those main drag sorts of streets. It's got a, you know, hopefully there aren't too many signals here, but we did pass through one, and it appears residential on both sides. It's a busy street, but it is a residential street as well, and so that's what we're looking at here, is that people could be pulling out of their driveways. There could be kids playing out front of these homes, these apartment buildings, and the danger is definitely a factor here. As the commanders will be dealing with this and deciding whether or when to back off, or perhaps to definitely continue. It appears they're going to continue, right, Scott?
Well, Mark, and I wanted to butt in there on you there. supervisor has made a decision at this point in time to back off. So the patrol cars are no longer behind this vehicle. They just thought it was too dangerous. By being right behind this vehicle, they were pushing the driver to make erratic turns, to drive at a higher rate of speed. So they've gone into surveillance mode. They're just tracking this from the air. And boy, that looks to be a pretty good tactical maneuver at this point in time, because we don't see the vehicle traveling at those high rates of speed, swerving in and out of traffic, but they still have a helicopter overhead. They still know where this individual is. They're still on the radio. They're making calls to let everybody, the other patrol cars, know where the suspect or suspects are heading at this point in time. And so at least initially, it looks like a great call from the police department to back off from the vehicle, this car, the suspect vehicle.
Okay, Scott, thanks very much. Michelle Tuzzi now, along with Mark Brown, as we begin the 5 o'clock hour, Eyewitness News at 5 o'clock. And we begin with this breaking news, a police pursuit on the streets of Long Beach, and it is a dangerous one, with this driver going at a very high rates of speed at times, driving erratically, crossing over into oncoming traffic at times, running through red lights. So far, Mark, I've seen no collision with any other vehicles.
Not yet. It's been close there. There have been plenty of close calls, not only weaving through traffic, but on occasion, Michelle, he's been in opposing traffic, crossing over the center line to get around intersections. But that, it seemed, was something that was employed when he was being pursued by the marked units with the lights and sirens. Now that has been pulled off, you see him basically holding off. He's not doing some of the erratic moves he was doing before. He is taking a left turn here off of Bellflower Boulevard onto Wardlow Road in the Long Beach area and slowing down. His speed has slowed down. The erratic nature of his driving has slowed down. But there are 3 people on board that vehicle, I believe it's a Honda, that are being pursued, or at least being watched at this point, surveilled by a law enforcement helicopter, as well, of course, as Air 7, as it is trying to deal with or escape from whatever started this process in the first place. Now the speed's getting down to about where they should be on this road, in the 30s, 35 miles an hour or so on Wardlow Road as it comes to a stop at an intersection. Scott Reif, what do you see ahead of him?
Well, there's some traffic at this intersection, but it's interesting. It's a 99 Honda Accord. That's the information that we had initially on this vehicle. And it's interesting as you go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, because when we were in the Compton area, to surveillance mode. Then they actually decided to get back on it for a time. And as you mentioned, now they're just tracking it from the air. And certainly as far as exposure to injury or somebody getting hurt, that has been a good tactical move from what we've seen. The driver in this case is not trying to get away, and he's obeying most of the speed laws and the traffic laws at this point in time. But we're in Long Beach now, and Long Beach supervisor must have made the call that it was better to just track from the air. We're still now eastbound on Wardlow, and once again, as we head eastbound, we'll eventually run into the 605 freeway, although we have not seen the vehicle that we know of on the... Assume that the suspects realize too much into that. Maybe they don't. But about
well,
like
we apologize for the breakup in the signal. We're going to try to fix that breakup for a second. Scott Reif's going to stay over it, and we're going to keep an eye on this pursuit. We're going to continue our coverage of it. We're going to try to fix the breakup in the signal, but it appears that maybe, it's entirely possible that they know that the pursuit has been, that the pursuing vehicles have been backed off by their commander. It's, with smartphones these days, they could be watching our coverage on their phones. So we don't know what sort of information they have about what sorts of things are happening, but they have slowed down without question. I say they because the indications are there are 3 people. Well, I've seen 3 people in the vehicle, the driver, one apparently female passenger, and 1 passenger in the back seat. They are still, at large at this point. Law enforcement would definitely like to bring them into custody, but they have elected to change their tactics in order to do that.
And it's still unclear what sparked this pursuit, how it all began. It's believed that it started in the Compton area, and that initially the LA County Sheriff's Department was involved. And at some point, the pursuit in the Compton area got a little too crazy. The driver took off, driving very erratically. So the sheriff's units pulled back and they went into surveillance mode. And then eventually Long Beach police took over. And now we continue on the streets of Long Beach. And once again, the authorities have pulled back because of the danger of the situation. And they hope by doing that, that will get the driver to slow down. And it appears that has been successful so far, Scott Reif.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you were with us earlier, you saw how erratic the suspect was driving the vehicle, how close he came to hitting some other cars, and the speeds that the car was up to, I think well above 60 miles an hour. Even though we're 60 now, we're in an area where it's probably 45 to 50 posted here, eastbound on Wardlow towards the 605. So I think backing off, certainly at this point in time, looks like a great move, only because it looked like there was a lot of danger to the public when there were patrol cars right behind the suspect vehicle. And at this point in time, you know, eastbound on Wardlow, about the posted traffic speed and obeying most of the traffic laws, it looked like a great tactical move as far as public safety is concerned. And with a helicopter overhead, with news media overhead, with the radios that they're calling ahead to let all the officers know which direction it is, a description of the vehicle, even though the patrol cars aren't right behind, it's highly unlikely the suspect or suspects could get away.
And, you know, what goes into making that decision, we should note, the commander takes a look at what sort of crime this person may have been involved with and weighs that against the danger to the public of continuing the pursuit. If, for example, this was someone who had just committed a violent crime or was suspected of a violent crime or had a warrant out for their arrest for a violent crime, their tactics might be a little bit different. They might not back off because they would consider the danger to the public of allowing this person to continue unpursued would outweigh whatever danger to the public would be posed by the pursuit itself. But if it's a nonviolent crime, if it's failure to yield is all they have, then they have to weigh that against the possible danger to the public of pushing this person into higher speeds and more erratic driving. So it's a decision process that is part of many decisions that commanding law enforcement officers have to make on a daily basis that affect people's lives and affect people's safety. And they will, you know, they're trained to make those sorts of decisions, and they just hope they make the right one. It appears in this case, so far, it's the right one based on what we can tell about the way things are proceeding.
And they probably know a little bit more about this than we do as well. For instance, you know, we haven't heard it stolen. So that means more than likely when they run the plates, it comes back to someone in particular they believe that's probably registered to. It's not, you know, an absolute there because, you know, sometimes the vehicle is stolen and you don't know it, so it's not reported to police. But if that comes back to a person who matches a description of the person who's driving, they've had patrol cars in front of this vehicle, then they'll know it's actually who it is that they're starting to chase. Now, we finally made a turn. We're just north of Los Alamitos Airport, and actually looked like there was an indecisive move there for a moment, and the suspect was going to make a turn, and all of a sudden now just continued along Ball Road here, still eastbound. We're in Los Alamitos. We're just north of the racetrack, if you're familiar with that, and the airport itself. It looks like, I'm being told we're in Cyprus, but it's right on the borderline here. From what we can tell, the aspect of backing off has been successful, as you mentioned, because he slowed down. I believe officers probably have a pretty good idea who they're dealing with at this point in time, and that may play a lot into them backing off as well.
Right. Well, I also wonder if that LA County grand jury report is factoring into any of the decisions that are being made now and how police pursuits are handled. That grand jury found earlier this month that police pursuits were causing unnecessary deaths and injuries, and called for better police training, and perhaps that report is having an impact, or perhaps, you know, this decision would have been made anyway. We have seen before that report was issued, the authorities backing off and going into tracking mode when pursuits got too dangerous.
Right. Well, this one was getting dangerous, and they certainly did go into tracking mode. We have seen far more dangerous pursuits, though, but usually that's a felony suspect. That's somebody who's already committed a violent crime that they know of. Shots frequently fired. This doesn't fit that bill so far from what we've been able to tell. And if it's someone that they, as Scott Reif pointed out, if it is a car that doesn't come back stolen, if the actual owner of the car is the person who's driving it, then they can also, frankly, set up shop, set up somebody right outside where the person lives because they figure they're going to end up back there at some point anyway and arrest them there. That happens as well. So there are different ways of dealing with this that don't involve pursuing someone through residential surface streets, as we have seen, and so that may factor into the decision. You did notice they passed by a black and white just right now, so they're backing off, but they're not abandoning this. We will point out that there's at least one law enforcement helicopter above. They are using their radios. They're keeping track of where this person is going. They're not going to lose him. They're just not going to follow his every single move from behind. And there's a big distinction to be made there, right, Scott?
Absolutely, and you know, some speculation said that we probably would have known by now if it was stolen, and then of course here comes across the radio, it is now a stolen vehicle. So trying to figure out who it is based on that license plate is not going to play into this. So we believe it's a stolen vehicle. That's what we're hearing from the police department. I'm not sure which department that came from. It may have been LAPD. We just don't know. I think we're still in the Cypress or Los Alamitos area. We're northbound on Valley View, headed up now back towards the 91 freeway, and that information came from Compton Sheriff, so it looks like they were the initial agency over it. They must have known it was stolen right from the get-go. They know how many people are on board, and we're going to try and go in close here, I think, in a moment with Extreme Vision and see if we can actually get a better idea who we're dealing with. I know it's a male in the back seat. It looked to me moments ago maybe they were smoking something. It was a female, we believe, in the right front, and then we believe there was a male actually driving the vehicle, and we have patrol cars posted in front of this individual, behind, but not, if we can't go back far enough with the camera, but they're back there probably a half a mile or so just in case the individual would turn around. But they're not right behind the car, and that's because of what we saw earlier in that erratic driving and the high speed. So, you know, these things can go on forever. You wonder if the individual or individuals know that the helicopter's overhead. You just saw it in our frame a few moments ago. The LAPD ship is still the helicopter overhead that is basically following the suspect, and you would think you'd be able to see it. You'd think they'd still know that someone was tracking them, but you never know. But we do know now it is a stolen vehicle.
A stolen vehicle, and now in Orange County. This originated in Los Angeles County, we believe, in the Compton area, went into Long Beach, and now we are in Cypress on Lincoln Avenue near Grand Circle. Police units have pulled back. They are in tracking mode in an effort to keep this driver from going too fast. We've seen some very erratic driving. I'm sorry? Sorry.
I think he's talking to other
Buena
traffic.
Park now. Well, sorry, just was getting some information in my ear. We're now in Buena Park in Orange County. 3 people on board, and as Scott Reif mentioned, we believe this is a stolen vehicle.
All right, and our car specialist, Dave Coons, has put something out on Twitter that I find kind of interesting, that it's believed to be a 99 Honda Accord, which would make it an 18-year-old car, and the potential then is that it may not be in the best mechanical condition. It may have trouble at higher speeds, may have trouble maintaining higher speeds, and so that may be a factor in why they're also slowing down. They know they're still being sought. They know they're in a stolen vehicle. They know that the police are overhead, but they're still driving slowly. So maybe they've elected, just perhaps because of the condition of the car, that they just can't go that fast. So that's information from our car specialist, Dave Coons, on Twitter. So we are keeping an eye. Go ahead, Scott.
Sorry about that. The individuals inside the vehicle, if we could through the windshield, there may be some glare. Now, we're coming up on a problem here that's going to affect our ability to track this. And Disneyland has a TFR, which is a temporary flight restriction, although it's not all that temporary. And that restricts us being able to fly at a certain altitude. We may have to go very high and get permission to do that. We're in Buena Park now on Lincoln, headed eastbound. And once we get into Anaheim, there's an area that we just cannot fly because of that TFR around Disneyland. So that could play into this. We wanted to get in front of the vehicle, go to our Extreme Vision, and see if we could get a better idea of what the individuals inside the vehicle are doing. And in some cases, that can help us out a little bit, just to try and figure out what's going inside the car and what their demeanor and what may be going on inside their heads. At this point in time with the glare, it's a little difficult. Continues going eastbound here on Lincoln, we are going to run into problems as far as our ability to continue to track. Now, LAPD will not have a problem. They can get clearance to go ahead and continue to stay overhead, but all other aircrafts have to get a discrete code, and they have to go above that temporary flight restriction to continue within 3 miles of Disneyland.
It's kind of scary when you see this person just stopped in traffic and these people around him or her, we're not sure who's driving.
They're oblivious, right?
Yeah, they have no idea that this car is involved in a pursuit right now, and that these 3 people could be extremely dangerous individuals. Here we go now, making a turn onto Westchester Drive.
Westchester.
In
That'll
the city
help.
of Anaheim. Scott, what lies ahead here?
Well, that will certainly help us out. I believe if we continue southbound on Westchester, we do not have to worry about that TFR. That's further to the east, so that will certainly help. We tried to get in front and take that view with extreme vision and look inside the vehicle, and that was difficult with the glare. But here's a right turn. There's no patrol cars behind this vehicle. We've seen a couple of turns in the last couple of moments. I don't know if that means the suspect is familiar with this area. Maybe they're going to get out of the vehicle and make a run for it. But we're in more of a residential area where something like that may happen. We're actually close to an apartment building or a condominium complex, and it looks like there's some decision making going on right now with the suspect that they may foot bail, which means they'll get out of this vehicle and make a run for it. You know, if they were smart, they'd probably call somebody and have another car they'd run into, but at this point in time it's hard to tell if anything like that is going on. But they're in a specific area now in an apartment complex, and we haven't seen that type of behavior since the pursuit started.
Looks like it's next to a high school. And
Western High School.
Right next to Western High School. If you're in Western High School, if there's something going on there right now, probably not because it's summertime. Could be football practice. We don't know. Try to go to a sheltered place at this point. The vehicle has stopped. Are these people foot bailing right now? Let's see if we can zoom in. Yep, looks like the door has opened. Foot bail right now. This
looks like the driver.
That's the driver, 182 Westchester Drive in Anaheim. He's taken off onto, it appears, onto the grounds of the high school.
That is correct.
All right, we're watching one person who is bailed out and now entering the grounds of what appears to be that high school. He's right there running alongside the athletic field at Western High School. Wow. This is in Anaheim. That's your suspect. That's your driver right there of this stolen vehicle. Now you can bet that law enforcement is converging on this place like you wouldn't believe. And there's going to be all sorts of black and whites here within minutes that will try to scoop this person up before he can get away. There must be some reason why they chose this area to bail. Is there? Does he have a car perhaps waiting for him? We don't know, but he's jogging now along the back of this parking area of this apartment complex that appears to abut Western High School. Now he's on the grounds of the high school, which indicates to me, or is it on the grounds of the high school or is it on the street outside of it?
I believe it's on the curb on Western Avenue, Mark.
All right, Western Avenue, walking now along the street. You see him. There's his description's being relayed to units on the ground. What do you think? Is he just trying to play coy here, trying to blend in? Like, hey, I'm just walking along the street here?
I think that's absolutely the case. I think that they went to an area they probably knew. There was 3 of them. They took off in different directions, and unfortunately, we can only take one, and we took the driver who sprinted out of the vehicle, now cutting across Western Avenue towards some homes here. And then when you split up like that, you know, it makes it more difficult for law enforcement because obviously they have 3 people they need to track, but you can tell he's getting tired. More than likely, he can see us overhead, and it's right across from the
what's he got in his hand?
High school on Western Avenue southbound.
What's
That's
that?
Where the suspect
can
is.
we zoom
Don't
in
know
tighter?
What is in his hand.
Can
Let's
we zoom in tighter and see what's in his hand? It looks like sunglasses and maybe a cell phone along with that or something. But he better not have anything in his hands when the police get to him because they're going to be very, very suspicious given the fact that this is a guy who's been driving a stolen car and has been fleeing from police for the better part of an hour now, perhaps a little bit less, but he should have his hands empty at this point and be ready to surrender immediately. But there he goes, just walking down. Is it Lindesita and Western? Is that correct?
I believe so. Western at Lindesita Lane, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe right there just coming across underneath that tree. Now, the LAPD helicopter is directly overhead of the driver. If we pull out of the shot a little bit right now, you will see the helicopter in a left-hand turn, keeping the suspect, you see him at the top of your screen there, in his sight. So we should see a patrol car coming up to this location at any moment. It would surprise me if the suspect doesn't know this area, if they just pick this area at random. I guess that's possible. And as you mentioned, once the patrol cars do move up on this vehicle, if he has something in his hands, then, boy, the possibility that a shooting could occur with police, that's a very good possibility because obviously police at this point in time don't know what they're dealing with. It's a stolen vehicle. We know that. We know this was the driver. We know that for certain. We don't know why that vehicle's stopping. If that's someone he may have known, but we do know it looks like a patrol car is pulling up and the suspect now is giving himself up.
Well,
all right.
There was no way he was going to get away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, this driver being arrested now, in the process of being arrested at West Lindesita Lane at South Loma Linda Drive in Anaheim. Unclear what happened to the other two individuals who were in that car, since obviously we could only follow one person with the helicopter and the camera. This is the most important person to follow, of course, because this is the person who was behind the wheel. And who knows, those other people, may have been trying to get the guy to stop and pull over, and maybe he just said no and kept going. So this was the person, first and foremost, that they wanted to catch. Of course, they want to catch the others as well. All
right, they're approaching him now. What they are probably telling him to do is spread his arms out, and he hasn't done that. His hands, they want to see his hands visible, preferably. They haven't been able to do that, so now they're going to cuff him. Looks like he's not resisting. The items that he had in his hand are off to his right, out of reach now, especially now that he's cuffed. And they've got him, and they're going to take him off to jail. Now, we don't know what happened with the other two people, as Michelle mentioned, that were in that vehicle. There was a female in the front passenger seat, and a male in the rear passenger seat. And we don't know what happened with them, whether they are also considered to be suspects in this or not. But we do know it was a stolen car, reported stolen, I believe, by Compton PD, if Scott Reif was, if I remember what Scott Reif said correctly. So they're facing that. They're facing charges of evading, at least he is, and reckless driving, among other things. And he will begin that process now of facing justice, now that he has been apprehended by, it appears, Anaheim police. Those are Anaheim units there. Is that correct, Scott?
I do believe so, yeah, and it looks like with this suspect being taken into custody, we can come out of the shot a little bit and then come back to the left and show you Western High School, and then show you where the pursuit actually ended, with a vehicle stopping at least, not the foot pursuit, and then we can show you where the suspects fled from that corridor, that alleyway, I believe right there. You see the helicopter overhead a little bit off to the right, and I think down in that, next to the overhead parking there is where it initially stopped. There it is right there. And so at this point in time, I believe they're still looking for the other two.
No, there they are.
Oh, there they are.
Yeah, that's the guy. The guy in the blue shirt was in the back of the car, and that appears to be the woman who was in the passenger seat. And they are sitting there, seated on the ground. And are there any police next to them right now? I don't see them.
Yeah, it's a little startling as we pushed up on that vehicle. I didn't see them as quickly as you did, and we don't see any patrol units here. What gave it away was the helicopter, the LAPD aircraft, was still in an orbit around this, but at this point in time, they're just sitting down in front of the vehicle. They're waiting for police to arrive, and obviously they're going to give themselves up peacefully here. The driver, as we saw just moments ago, is in custody, and he's the one who's certainly going to be facing the biggest charges here. These two may not be facing any charges at all. It'll be hard to tell exactly when they figure out what happened, but the vehicle, according to Compton Sheriff, was stolen, and it looks like these two now will be taken into custody as soon as a patrol car pulls up. So here it goes. You can tell from their demeanor that the police are showing up right now, and they're doing everything that the police are commanding, and they'll be taken into custody here in just a moment.
Well, it's possible that they wanted nothing to do with this, and they, yeah. So we'll work to get more information about this. Scott Reif, thank you very much for your coverage, and we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.